Today I'm going to show you how to replace valve seals on a dirt bike. This method should work for anything with bucket style valve pushers and cams and whatnot. If you have, some of them have the adjuster nut. That doesn't work for these. This is specifically for the bucket style. So this bike here is an 05 KX250F. So I'm going to go ahead and do one valve at a time. You can do all of them at once, but you'll take out your bucket here. Most of the time there's going to be a little shim in there. If not, it could still be inside the head, sitting on top of the valve here. But you just want to make sure you get that. We'll set that to the side. And then you'll also need a valve spring, I don't know if you would call it compressor or decompressor tool. There's a bunch of brands that make them. I think I got mine off Amazon. It was pretty cheap. This one has different size valve spring decompressors. This is the 23 and it seems a bit big. Let me pull the 19 out. 19 will be fine. So what you want to do is find one of these that will fit on top of your valve here, and it will clamp onto your tool, and on the other side you'll be holding on to the actual valve itself. So let me go ahead and put this together. I've got my tool set up here. I've got a 23 on this side and a 19 on this side. The 19 is going to be what goes onto the top of our valve stem here, and the 23 will go on the actual valve itself. Got to do a bit more adjusting. You want to line it up to where it'll hold the valve, because you're going to try to press down on it and it's not supposed to move. And then you want this to line up with the top of your valve here. I'll show you in just a second how that works. So that's lined up on the top of the valve, and then this one is on the bottom of the valve. Can't see it because there's no light in here. I'll just do it like that. That one's lined up on the bottom of the valve to hold it in place. Your tool should come with a rod so you can spin this, but apparently mine's not in there. But I've got some rods up here. So one of your rods here will have a hole for you to stick that piece through, and all you're going to do is tighten that clamp down a little bit more, and eventually you'll hear it kind of pop. And if you can watch the top of the valve, you can see it sometimes decompress enough. There it goes. You hear the pop, and that's going to be the retaining clips releasing. Easiest part to do now would be to grab a small magnet and get those retainers out of there. I'll have to go down a little bit more. I heard one come out. You're going to have two in there on each valve. Just little metal retaining clips. The wider side goes up if you don't remember it. Sometimes you can wiggle the tool around and that'll break the other one loose. There's the other one. Set it to the side because I'm going to need that tool. And once you get those retainers out, you can loosen your tool back up and actually take your tool all the way off. Now, I'm only going to show you one right now, and then I'm going to do the rest of them here in a few. But this process works for all of them. You can do them all at one time as long as you keep them organized. So we'll move the tool out of the way. That came off of there. So now, if you flip it over, you'll pull at least one spring out, and you'll have a little, it's not a cap, but it's a cap. You'll have a cap on there as well. These are what brand? I can't even tell. Sometimes you'll have two springs. This one looks like it only has one. And then your valve, you can just push it out, and then you have a valve. Now you can check your valves. I'll actually show you how to do that too. I've seen a bunch of people put them in a drill tighten them down a little bit, and then run the drill. If you see it wobble, it's bent. This one looks like it's good. I don't see it wobbling at all. So I'd say it's not a bent valve, so that's good. We don't have to buy a valve on this side. So inside here, it's going to be extremely hard to see. But there's a little, this one's brown, there's a little brown seal. They can really be any color. Get a pair of pliers and gently but firmly grab it. And I like to kind of twist and pull on it a little bit, and it'll pop out. So then you'll take your new valve seals. Looking at these seals here, they look to be all the same. Some of them will have a full metal coating on them, like a little sleeve on them. Some of them will have just a small retaining, what's it called? Like a retaining spring, kind of like some of the seals do. But this one seems to be normal. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna stick this valve back up in there, up through there. That'll just help me line this valve seal up. Actually, if you have some, put a little bit of oil on it. It wouldn't hurt. It may smoke just a hair when you first rebuild it, but you won't be starting off with a dry seal, so hopefully it won't mess up. So we'll push the whole valve down along with the seal. Once we hit the bottom, we can pull the valve back out so we can set the head down, and you just kind of push on it really hard. I've seen some people's kind of like click. I've never had any necessarily do like a click sound. They do have like a small groove in there that, you know, they catch on to, but as long as it's pushed in, I think you're good. Shouldn't have any issues there. Let me make sure I don't use a bad seal. Another way you can kind of tell if they're wore out, if you're unsure, if you have them apart here, is whenever you take your seal out. So right now, it takes force, not a lot obviously, but the valve just doesn't fall out of the seal. If you pull the spring and stuff off and you can barely touch it and the whole valve falls, it was probably worn out. But we're good there. So we'll put this spring back in, flip it up on its side because it's easier, and then we got to put our tool back on so we can hold on to the valve to keep it from coming out, and we can push this spring down to get the retaining clips back in. Now this part is actually the hardest part, and that's going to be getting the retaining clips back in, at least for me. There's not a great way that I've found to get them in other than to just struggle. So you'll push that spring down enough to where, you probably can't see it, there's a small groove in the top of that valve there, and I'm going to take a pair of pliers. Again, probably going to be pretty hard to see here, but you'll get kind of the gist. Take a pair of pliers, and you'll kind of just drop it into place. And then you're going to take the other one, kind of do the same thing, but sometimes the valve doesn't, or the spring doesn't sit straight with the tool on there. So that second one is kind of hard to get in. Kind of got to maneuver the tool around to get it to drop in. Sometimes you actually have to take the tool almost all the way back off just to get it to fall into place. Like, that's still not in, but it would fall into place. Maybe if I can press it down a little bit more, it may open up the spring a bit more. I'll actually just try to loosen it up like I'm complete with it. See what happens. Nope, that one's still not wanting to go in all the way. think they're right beside each other. So we'll go back up now. Looks like they fell into place good to me. Yep, they're in place. And you'll know because they'll actually sit in there and not try to fall back out. Plus, your valve won't fall out when you press on it. So you can get these valves to actuate. They're kind of hard because the springs are stiff, but if they're in there flush with each other and pretty much where that groove is, then you're done now. You're done with that. So now we'll take our shim back out of our bucket to make sure it goes in where it needs to. Throw the bucket back on. Now that your bucket's in, and you can leave it out just to be sure of which one you've done, but I'm not gonna mix them up. Bucket's back in, valve seal's done. It's that easy, but you do have to take it off the bike to do it. Some people have done methods of compressed air into the cylinder, but I'm not gonna risk that. It's easier just to take it apart because most of the time you're gonna have other issues that you need to address anyway. But if this video helped you out at all, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.